we go. It's your first ever time being on a podcast.
First time caller, long time listener. It's giving camp.
Does it do you listen to a lot of podcasts?
I do, yeah. Yeah, I'm a fan.
Do you like I feel like I go through phases where I'm really into like I have a lot of time where I'm like, ooh, this I'm listening to a lot of podcasts, and then there'll be a change in my life where I don't have as much time where I'm listening to podcasts, like starting a new job or something. So then there's sometimes where, the podcasts that like have seasons after seasons, I'll be like, oh wait, are they still making stuff? Oh cool, they're still making stuff.
hmm Yeah, I feel like I listen to a lot of podcasts when I'm like too busy to socialize. And I'm like, I just need to like
Mm.
feel like I'm around people and I don't have to agree with what they're saying, but they're here. And it's so nice. Or just like, I don't know, hearing like I listen to some movie podcasts, stuff like that. It's really just
Yeah.
fun. I like the funny ones.
Yeah. I like
Or like a scary one.
oh, like do you listen like narrative or like true crime? Like what kind of scary? Not true crime.
Not true crime. I'm
Yeah.
anti-true crime. But I like a narrative. I think everybody knows Welcome to Night Vale. Like that was kind of
Hmm.
my dipping my toes into it. There's a really good one that I don't follow close enough that's called Gods of Appalachia. And
Oh, I've heard of that.
yeah, and I grew up in the South, so I love any type of like Appalachia, like horror kind of, I don't know, it's just so fun.
Yeah. I was recently, so I, besides It's Giving Camp, I have other podcasts that are they're narrative, but they're actual play, so they're, playing role-playing games, and that's like how the story is told. And yeah, I've gotten to go to a couple of festivals. Like I was just at New Jersey Web Fest, and getting to like interact with podcast people there is so cool. I got to meet the creators of Regarding Dracula. I don't know if you know about that, but they do basically like highly produced audio drama version of Dracula, and then they release it because Dracula is, like told in letters, and so they release it on the date of each like or letter or journal entry. So you're like getting the story kind of like chronologically. Like that's kind of that was my I was listening to a little bit of that while putting up Halloween decorations because I was like, I want
Oh,
a little something spooky too. But I was a big fan of the Magnus Archives, so that's another of the spooky
yes.
podcasts that I've listened to a lot of.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's so cool that you got to go to New Jersey and like meet the people too.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
fun.
It was very lovely. It turns out pretty much everyone in the indie space is just some guy, Like just some guy, gender neutral. Everyone's just kind of like, yeah, I'm making my thing, and have not met any like everyone I've talked to is so down to earth and lovely. I mean, mostly like interacting with actual play folks, of course, because that's my thing. But it's like big name people who it's like, oh my god, they have like their shows are like winning so many awards and like getting so many streams, and they're just like, oh, you're just so lovely. You're just like so, so chill.
He's just a guy.
Yeah. Do you listen to a lot of podcasts, Fritz?
I listen to my fair share. They're mostly all horror movie or just film podcasts.
Oh yeah.
My main offender is Pure Cinema podcasts. I really do enjoy listening to just like random episodes. Uh,
Yeah.
I mean, it's October, so I've been on a little bit more of a horror podcast kick. So I just listened to their horror movie all-nighter episode with insert name here guest from F This Movie. They programmed some stuff from like 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. and
Whoa.
just go through like how they're feeling it. And they had like different themes for each slot. So like the first one would be something to ease them in. They had an Italian slot at like 2 a.m. and
Whoa.
stuff like that. So it was fun to hear what they had programmed, and like when I had already seen a movie and I know exactly why they're putting that there, it made me feel slightly vindicated for, I don't know, just seeking that movie out myself and
Yeah.
being weird about it.
Yeah. I love thinking about I this is my first year where I'm trying to do the Scarecrow Psychotronic challenge, and I didn't watch a movie. I haven't watched a movie every day, but I am still gonna try to like get through all the prompts and like into November, like still like watch something for every prompt. And it is like, I really like thinking about how movies fit into certain themes and things, and also like not very good at it because there's so many stuff, so much I haven't seen, but I love thinking about interesting double features and like pairing films based on like themes or like how they could play off each other and stuff. So that feels like I want to segue, because there was recently the film that we're discussing today. There was a video essay that someone made that then was like, the Divinity Instagram reposted it to their story. Is that what it was?
Yeah, yeah, I saw it. It was posted 6 minutes ago. I was chronically online. They posted what was it? Divinity's son, or the Substance daughter.
Yeah.
Obviously alluding to the new, Demi Moore film, The Substance, going into, well, I also, no spoilers on The Substance because I haven't finished it.
I haven't seen it either, so
but going into like the utilization of drugs and youth and beauty and a lot of themes that are covered in Divinity. And I watched the first like 30 minutes of it last night, and there's some parallels for sure. So
Yeah.
we're not here to talk about The Substance.
We're not here to talk about The Substance, but I was like, honestly, kind of based pairing, because, and our dear Fabiola is not able to make it today. Life happens, but I'm very glad that I have two wonderful guests. I want you to introduce yourselves now, since they've been hearing your voices.
Yeah, I'll start. Hi, I'm Allie. I am a projectionist at the Grand Illusion Cinema in Seattle, Washington, United States, which is where I met Saffron, and where I met Fritz. I can also, well, that's my intro.
Yeah.
Right? I like movies. I like to know how the technology works, and I'm a fan of this podcast too. So I'm really excited to be here. And I have opinions.
Yes.
And I'm here to share them, and they're fun. So I will pass the mic to Fritz.
Hi, I'm Fritz. I also project at the Grand Illusion, and
Do you have opinions?
I have so many opinions. So like it'll come up when we get into the history of how we saw this movie. But I've been a horror movie fanatic since I was 14. I've been into movies ever since I was able to understand language, I guess. And I've been obsessive about like reading things about them, writing about them, from time to time do some like film criticism on whatever intermediate scale I'm on in the world. I pretty much just fill my entire free time with stories. So
Yeah.
I guess this is one of those stories that we're going to talk about.
Yeah. I'm really glad that you guys could get to be on this episode, because started to say but then forgot that Fabiola I saw her Letterboxd review last night, was for Divinity, was, I believe it was like, I mean this in the best way, this is the substance for men. Like, I do think so.
Yeah.
You could mean that in a derogatory way, and it'd be fine.
You could mean that in a derogatory way.
I would put it in
I
a
mean it in a
derogatory
derogatory way. I stand by what she said, and I'll take it even further. We'll get there.
So, okay, yeah, today we're discussing Divinity, which came out in 2023. It was on the festival circuit first. Was it on?
It premiered at Sundance
in 2023. Still,
I believe
right?
it won an award.
Really? For what?
Well, so
vibes. Probably just vibes.
The Vibe Award.
So the director is Eddie Alcazar, and this was his first feature, I believe, and made a bunch of short films. The short films were really well received on the festival circuit. And so from like different interviews and stuff that I saw, Steven Soderbergh produced Divinity, and kind of just like based fully on how much he enjoyed Alcazar's short films, was like, here, I'm gonna fund you and you can make something, and had very little oversight. And yeah, this is a film that I'll just say I'll start with kind of my background with this film was I'm do concessions at Grand Illusion, and when we were showing it last year, and I was overhearing little bits of dialogue while I was like reloading candy and stuff and going back and forth from the projection room out to the like concession stand. And I was like, this sounds really interesting. It's this one scene that it's I was overhearing the scene where these two mysterious brothers, I think, as the plot summary describes them, have this main kind of mad scientist guy tied up. And I was like, this sounds kind of sexy. What is this movie? And, was the film that I imagined just overhearing that better than the actual movie?
I'd say yes.
Probably.
Maybe, probably, but I brought my best friend Lucy along to see it with me. It was like, I really want to see this movie. Come see this movie. And everyone, I feel like our audience didn't know what to make of it. Everyone was just kind of laughing awkwardly. And by the end of the movie, I was like, oh, this is camp. This is so clearly camp to me. And I got home, looked online, looked through every single review that I could. No one, and I still feel like looking on Letterboxd and stuff, no one is describing this movie as camp. And I think it is a true new camp classic because I do not take this film seriously, and everyone else seems to take it seriously. And I think that is hilarious because I think that there is really interesting stuff going on in this make that was not the filmmaker's intentions. And that's honestly like part of, naive camp is being able to make your own meaning out of things. So yeah, I'm really glad to also have you guys on because I ultimately come away still enjoying this film, and I'm happy to have it that balanced out.
Mhm.
So, do what do we want to give a plot summary too before we kind of describe, like, because I feel like
Yeah, I feel like we should do a plot summary and then we can go into our experiences with the film, if that sounds good.
yeah, or yeah,
'Cause yeah,
yeah, because then maybe giving a plot
Okay.
summary and then you can
my
also
experience
give
with the film involves
more details of your reactions.
I just rewatched this last night, and so the plot summary is we're in this world that is the landscape is barren. It's some post-apocalyptic event or something, and 97% of the population is rendered sterile, and there's this new drug thing called Divinity, and it's supposed to make you live forever, or at least like keep your body the same age while you live on. But the drawback is that you're sterile. Like you cannot have children. Your sperm is bad or whatever, however that works. And it's set entirely in like this gigantic estate of the guy whose father has started working on this serum, him completing his father's work and just about to put out some more shipments, or the first shipments. It's not altogether clear. And while this is happening, two aliens like land on his property, and they seem to be there to intervene with whatever he's doing with Divinity, and they torture him with his own serum, and that's it, I guess.
Yeah.
Everything else is just filled in with just the imagery that it's invoking.
Mhm.
That's the plot.
Yeah, it's sexy drugs that are have a moralistic, almost, we can get into that later, but it's this
Yeah.
moralistic perspective on like sex and partying and drugs and the beast of what you've created taking over you, and muscle daddies and techno and just hot women being hot.
Yeah.
Which is
And
that's what they do best, you know. We should put that on the big screen.
and also this film was shot in 16 millimeter, blown
Yes.
up for 35 millimeter. We projected it. And this film is an excess of style with maybe less of a plot and more of a like let's be like as cool looking as possible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And it succeeds. It's very cool. Well, I've talked to some people that say it's actually not that good looking, but in my opinion, I think it looks really cool. I do like the very desolate landscape. I like all of the like almost negative space. Like it is this desolate landscape, but then there's so much like dark shadows that it feels like suffocating and like very small. Like the set looks very small, and I don't know. I thought it was really fun, and we projected it at the Grand Illusion on 35 millimeter. It was like a brand new print. It looked crazy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, shout out Trevor, our programmer at the Grand Illusion, for getting us like this crazy print.
Friend of the pod, Trevor.
Friend of the pod, Trevor, who's definitely listening. Yeah, so I remember, I can start with like my experience with it. I saw the trailer for it. And so I saw the trailer, I don't know, maybe a month before it came out. And I was like, this is my shit. The music is really great. Like if you can insert like the clip of it's called, I think, Intro Title by I'm forgetting. It's so good. It's just like the beats are really sick, and the, like I said earlier, drugs, partying, sex, this like overconsumption, overindulgence of like letting your pure like vile human instincts take over. And that is like one of my favorite themes in a film. So I was like, yeah, I'm in.
You will never age physically again. Sex doesn't matter, but size does. You will be at your peak performance and fullest potential.
I actually saw it on Saffron's night. Shout out Saffron.
Wait, I remember. Yeah, you did come in then.
I remember because I had just started like a new job, and I was like washing dishes like crazy, like listening to the soundtrack before I even saw the movie. I was like, I gotta go. I have somewhere to be. So yeah, and Greg projected it. Shout out Greg, friend of the pod. And it was really, really exciting. Like I always love, I feel like whenever one of our film projectionists is running something, like they always have their own little spin on it. So it's always an honor to watch Greg. And I rushed over to the theater from downtown, and I don't usually, I try and help out with concessions. I don't think I helped out. I don't remember, honestly. Yeah. I was so locked into the movie and then was very thoroughly challenged by the source material, and subsequently like kind of let down because I think I overhyped it in my head because they had such a, you know, immaculate display of it. So that was my night, and I think that was around the time when you maybe first started. You were at least like a month or two in, and I was like, yeah, Saffron rocks. Like they're giving Saffron the cool shifts like this, because I'm also Tuesday concessions too. Tuesdays rock. So.
Yeah, Tuesday's great because you also get, there's so many more members that come in on Tuesdays too, because that's our member mooch day. An extra person in.
Yeah, you to really connect with the people. But it's fun. I saw it in a full, you know, almost full audience. You know, the Grand Illusion is 68 seats. There were at least like 40 plus people in there, so it was quite full. And there was a lot of like nervous laughing. Like we kind of couldn't read the tone, I feel like, as an audience, and I felt a little uncomfortable. And you know, feeling uncomfortable at a movie at the Grand Illusion is a common experience, I think.
Apparently, yeah.
Apparently.
Yeah.
So I'm hearing. But yeah, that was my experience with it. And then that was almost a year ago. And then I've watched it twice since then, since we've been trying to like reschedule this. And didn't like it at first. My visual reaction was that I was like, oh, I was very let down. And then upon rewatch, I was like, no, I'll give it some more credit, and we can get into that later. But yeah.
Well, my history with it is I first saw this last year, just like you guys, but I watched a screener of this to review some like new genre films because it was last October, almost exactly a year ago at this point. And I was like, okay, this looks interesting. Steven Soderbergh produced. It's like sci-fi. It's got Stephen Dorff in it, and the kicker for me was Scott Bakula. I was like, fuck yeah, I love Scott. So I checked it out, and I just don't feel anything for this movie except for the opinions that I have about it. And I gave it kind of scathing review and kind of just like forgot about it. Like other than like, oh, that's the thing that I reviewed. And when it came to the Grand Illusion, I was like, oh no, I'm good. Even on 35, like I didn't really feel the need to revisit it, but I did rewatch it last night in preparation for this episode, and I feel less enthusiastic about the movie than I did before. However enthusiastic I was the first time. Yeah, I'm gonna be that person that's gonna like rip the fuck into this thing. Um, it's really weird because I like the performances, but I just think it's not a cohesive whole that works all together.
And I do want to step in, and I meant to say this earlier. Saffron, when you said earlier that you walked away from the film saying this is camp, this is a new classic. So I'm not a scholar on camp. I'm grateful to be in this space, but I am also like really excited for this sort of dialogue for, I can't think of the right way to word this, but like a lower stakes version of like, I'm excited for you to convince me that this film is camp. I'm not gonna like, I don't mean it in like an argumentative way. I'm like, I really want to see where your thoughts are on this, because I'm sort of struggling myself to like, I can see stylistically like where that means, but I think this dialogue will be really fun to like get inside your head and see.
I mean, the first thing about one of the things about camp is an examination of artifice and an examination of performance, and that is so tied to gender, because so much of, I think, gender roles and gender things, like gendered experience it's constructed by society and influenced by commercials and products and consumerism. And that is absolutely like part of the plot of this film is Divinity. It's this drug that is, we see in part, like they often have like a television on that is like playing various commercials and stuff, and we get to see that everything, like, it is the most like heightened sexualized, like everything is like crazy sexualized in this movie, and distilled into very like extreme versions of masculinity and femininity, with these like muscle daddies, as you said, these like, it's this drug that they take and it looks like a perfume bottle, and but it makes them act like they're on like ecstasy, and it also physically changes their body to be like a steroid, where it like makes these crazy muscles and stuff for all the men. But then there's this, because of there's this like theme of reproduction and like sexual purity. Well, so part of the plot is that there's these two brothers that are aliens, or I like to call them stars because they look like they're like little shiny stars, but then they fall down to earth, or they're maybe angels. It's very unclear what they are. They are joined by a character who I don't remember her name. I
want to talk about her.
Is she given a name? I'm assuming.
Yeah, so they call up a sex worker. It's kind of like unclear because the two is that who you're talking about?
Yeah.
So the two aliens that are like these two, they're like twins, I believe. They call the brothers. They have so many names. There's two dudes. they capture the current like formulator of Divinity, and
Yeah.
they're torturing him, and they're like hooking him up to this IV, and then they're like, you know what we should do while we're here, while we're kind of going on our anti-sex crusade, we need a sex worker in here because we want to fuck. And like they call up this beautiful woman. I think is this I'm on Letterboxd. Is her name Nikita?
Mhm.
Yeah.
La
So
Femme Nikita.
yeah, and they get Nikita on there, and she's almost like this this dominatrix type, and she has some fun little lines where she, like, you know, they don't answer the door on time, and she's like, I can't believe I fucking came all the way out here, like I'm never doing that shit again. And it's like these fucking rich people, and you know, it's giving like survival sex work for sure. And they have this like it's almost incestuous three-way, because it is implied that they're twin brothers. I don't know. There's something happening
Yeah.
in that scene. But yeah, Nikita comes in and kind of doesn't know what she's in for. She thinks she's just doing like an out call. Later, I think she's exploring this mansion and finds Jackson Pierce, the creator of Divinity, hooked up to this IV drip of the drug, and he's so like misshapen by the like rapid growth of it, and she's obviously like horrified. She's like, what the fuck is happening? And he's, you know, he's screaming at her,
Yeah.
really, to like unhook him because he's being tortured.
And then he like kind of is misogynistic about it too, right? Like, doesn't he
More
like
than
call?
kind of, yeah.
More than
Yeah.
kind of. Yeah.
Well, as we're like introduced in voiceover at the beginning, voiceover by Bella Thorne. Bella Thorne's in this.
Yes, she is.
Also,
Sure.
and like a lot of the women in this film are played by like adult actresses, and we have these kind of sex worker characters who are played by actual sex workers, that Jackson Pierce's, he like is fucking this girl, and maybe he's her girlfriend, but maybe she's just another like sex worker at the very beginning, like, but
It's all
yeah,
commodified. And
Yeah.
I mean, you know, love and light to Bella Thorne. I wouldn't really call her a sex worker,
Yeah,
but attempted, you know.
But okay, this is, I don't know at what point to bring in. I feel like I'm just going to bring it in whenever it feels relevant. Various things that I learned from listening to this interview with Steven Soderbergh and Alcazar, the director. So it felt to me, I'm like, okay, if you're like trying to explore the commodification of female bodies, and but also trying to be like, this is it's like, what is the theme? What are the themes that are being explored? Whatever that is, it still feels really interesting to be like, okay, let me cast actresses who have worked in the porn industry, or worked like in, or have maybe certain reputations and stuff. And I was like, oh, this must be intentional casting. Well, no. He said in the interview that he was like, oh, like, yeah, they were just like, oh, I had connections through, like, we had similar agents or like friends and stuff, where I like knew these actresses wanted to get into doing more traditional film work, so I cast them.
He said,
it's
oh,
like,
they're hot, get them in the movie.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or not even, like, he didn't even say that. It's kind of just like, oh, well, oh, they're looking for, oh, if they want to work on a film, let me cast them in my film.
Interesting, like plausible deniability
Mhm.
happening there.
So this is the thing, is I could really had a hard time finding interviews with the director and like finding behind the scenes stuff. So like really my main source is this like featurette on the Blu-ray, and the tone of Alcazar, I genuinely think this guy is kind of like, I don't know, he's just kind of, he seems really like blasé about everything. And
Yeah.
so I genuinely think that he doesn't maybe think about how his film might be read.
That makes so much sense to me.
Yeah. Same. And also, like, thank you for listening to that, because that interview between Steven Soderbergh and Eddie Alcazar, because I tried and I could not. It was so boring, which listeners of the pod heed my warning. I just it lacked a lot of depth in like kind of the choice. I was interested to see why he was doing what he was doing.
So other things like from that interview, like he talked about how he creates through images. So like he made a storyboard before he made a script, which I think you can tell. Like it feels like
that.
being like, oh, and he had this idea of like, oh, what would be like if someone like abused a longevity drug? Like that was kind of his starting, like at least what he said was his kind of starting like idea. And he also, like, the interviewer asked him like, oh, how do you like think of this, how this film fits with like other sci-fi films? And he's kind of like, I don't know, like I don't think about genre.
Oh my God.
Which is very funny to hear that when also on the Blu-ray there is a video essay by Samm Deighan, I think was the last name, talking about how Divinity was so pretentious. It was clear, I'm like, clearly it was a video essay that was commissioned for like the Blu-ray, because it was talking about how Divinity fits with other speculative fiction stories and films, and like comparing it to, from everything to like Dune and Paul Atreides to like Clive Barker and stuff.
You can't see our faces, but we're like looking real confused and shaking our heads over here.
Get my boy Paul the fuck out of this comparison, because this is nothing like that.
Free Mr. Atreides, please.
Oh my God.
Interesting.
Maybe
in landscape choices.
Yeah, that's like 2% of the movie. It's not even the population amount that can still have kids.
Yeah. So this is the thing too. It's like there's this like theme of, okay, like if this is about abuse, there's this abuse of the longevity drug, and it ends up leading to this like really high infertility rate. And as we mentioned, there's this sex worker, Nikita. Was that her name, or is that the actress's name?
The character's name is Nikita.
Okay, Nikita. She talks in like very, all of the dialogue is delivered in this way that's very like wispy, like sensual kind of. She talks about how she's still pure because she hasn't taken Divinity, so she can still get pregnant, and seems to have this adoration for fertility. In Jackson's house, there's this fish tank, or like it's even not a tank, it's a bowl with one fish in it, and she like talks about how the fish is so beautiful with her swollen belly full of eggs, and how it's so sad that there isn't a male to fertilize her. It's like wasted potential.
Like, tell me you don't have a breeding kink.
This is Breeding Kink, the movie.
Yeah, pretty much.
She's beautiful. See how her belly's swollen? She's ready to spawn thousands of eggs in the water. A male fish would usually then fertilize by releasing their sperm. The eggs will hatch to larvae, but most get eaten by other creatures. I guess it's by chance that some survive to become adults. She will spawn, and no one will be there to fertilize. Just wasted potential. Sad, really.
Okay, to spoil it, because this is, I mean, I feel like we have to spoil this film to really discuss it. So ultimately, there's this really weird, actually, but kind of badass fight sequence that's like partially stop motion, and the Star Angel alien brothers things, they die, but they explode and then like rain this shining light everywhere, and Nikita is suddenly pregnant, and she is found by this like sisterhood led by Bella Thorne of the few women who are still pure, and they're like freaking out. They're like, oh my god, she's gonna give birth, and they're like screaming, they're like, it's coming. And what she gives birth to is a plant with a bunch of penises.
As the roots, they're just like dangling underneath.
And I believe that's the final scene, right?
Yes. And that's where the
it's
movie
in
ends.
color, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, it fades the color for like a second or
For all the
two.
penises.
Yeah.
Yeah,
midway.
you got to see them in color.
So that's the thing. That ultimately is what makes, like, the ending is what solidifies this as camp to me, because yes, it's like, okay, this obsession with fertility, which could feel really kind of gross. I'm sure you're going to go into this more, Allie,
Oh
because we've
yeah,
like
I
discussed
have
it.
a thing to say.
But it's so ridiculous and unrealistic that I'm like, for me, I'm like, it feels like it can't be taken seriously. And it feels like, to me, when I watch this movie, it really, like, based on the interviews too and stuff that I've read, it's a series of images and scenes that have very little depth and very little, like, meaning other than, hey, look at cool hot stuff and like big muscly bodies and ooh, cool action and fighting and stuff. And what those images all mean, it feels like the message is left up to the audience to interpret. And to me, that is one of the things that is what camp is to me. Like, camp is substance from style. And with naive camp, especially when there's either intention to do one thing or not an intention to do really anything. And if it's so heavily stylized, that ends up creating and allowing the space to unpack your own meaning.
Mm-hmm.
That's my at least my pitch for now about why I think this film is camp.
Yeah. Yeah, and I can definitely see that. Like, clearly, like in that interview, Eddie Alcazar not being super intentional with it. Like, it is just vibes. It is naive camp. It is really fun. I want to like sit with like what you're saying about like, it's not meant to be taken seriously. But like me sitting in the theater surrounded by, it was a very, very male attended event, I will say. And also just when I watched it at home, it was like, I want to not take this seriously. I want to soak in the vibes because the vibes are immaculate. But I physically cannot, I don't mean to get political on the pod.
No, get political. That's what this,
like,
yeah.
But like, okay, we have Eddie Alcazar and Steven Soderbergh. We got two men at the top of this. I didn't really fully look through the crew to see like the gender breakdown. It doesn't need to be accurate. And I want to preface this by saying I'm not a person that needs movies to be particularly progressive. I don't need that. However, I think that like art is interpreted through the political and material reality of the year that it came out. It came out a year ago. We're in an election year. I'm not a big electoral politics kind of guy, but I was born and raised in the South. Now I live in Seattle. This movie is about, it's almost giving incel in the way that it approaches the idolization of sexuality with women. And it's also giving the majority of women that I talk to are sex workers. And they're so hot and sexy, and they say things, because they're putting on a performance, but ultimately at their heart, they want to be pure. They want to be a mother, they're catering to my fantasies. And so it's very, very incel coded to me in the sense of it being detached from a holistic scope of like what a woman is. And then zooming out, the political landscape that we're in, like in terms of reproductive care and access, like I don't know how to fix it, but like, or even where to begin, but like, I'm from Georgia. My family lives in Alabama now. You could not have an abortion there.
Yeah.
Like, you cannot. And 2 years ago, I had like an ectopic pregnancy that I had to have surgically removed because I almost died. And one of the things that the doctor said when I was like waking up, they're two travel nurses from Idaho, and they were like, "Oh, we couldn't have done this surgery in Idaho, which is one state over." And they were like, "Damn, this bitch would have died if I was in her care one state over." So when I sort of see things that are like, okay, this film wants to be so subversive in its, and I'm kind of monologuing, so I'll tone it down. It wants to be subversive in its use of, drugs and partying, and in particular, like the muscle daddy scene in the spa. It has it has all of those elements of it, but its core message to me when I walk away from it is women are sexy vessels for pregnancy, and they want to be pregnant. And you know, that is true. There are a lot of women that do want to be mothers, like that might not have the economic like means to do so, or like, you know, we're so stratified as a society. You know, we live in a society.
Whoa.
And I know, crazy. It's sort of like ignoring all of that, and it becomes this very like male fantasy that's really detached from reality, and it ultimately supports this dominant idea that women are for carrying children, and women want that, and they can't party and they can't have fun, and mothers don't. It's very like black and white thinking in a black and white film, and I'm just like, dog, what are we? I don't know. It just it struck something to me at my like core like lived experience of like, I think that this film frustrates me in a way that is like, I don't know how to like say it.
No, I really, first of all, really love, I really appreciate being that you're able to, you know, sharing that and sharing your lived
Oh, yeah.
experience. And because I honestly, you know, I don't think it quite had occurred to me that I'm like, oh, wait, that it does, the fact that taking this drug means that you can't get pregnant does feel like it then forces this dichotomy that you can't have fun if you also want to get pregnant. And yeah, and it is also weird that it has this like kind of weird, like, it's an overused, like, the hooker with a heart of gold trope of like,
Yes.
Yep.
And sorry to interrupt, one more thing. It is really interesting to me that they you know, Nikita is a black actress, and she's, I think, is maybe one of the only black actors in this film, at least with like a lead role, and feels that the hooker with a heart of gold trope is giving almost racist to me a little bit. But I don't know, I think her character is like one of the best, but it's still an interesting stylistic choice.
yeah. Well, okay, I want to hear what, do you have thoughts on like the ending, Fritz? Or at least
Yeah.
this kind of the theme of like being pure and being able to reproduce and stuff.
Yeah, I don't have so many thoughts about the ending. Like, to me, the movie disappears up its own ass far before like that final shot. But something that I was just thinking about while Ali was talking, this divinity drug, it's supposed to enhance and like rejuvenate or whatever, but it's only defined based on the binary biological definition of man and women in the film. So what happens when a trans man takes it? What happens when a trans woman takes it? What happens when someone who's non-binary takes it? Does that cause dysphoria? Does that cause euphoria? Do they implode? And then that kind of destroys the whole model of Eddie Alcazar's allegory, however little he's thought about it. And it runs to me as, I don't feel like it's a huge stretch for me to call this movie shallow, but that's one degree that I just thought of that proves that Alcazar really isn't putting any thought into what he's trying to say. And it, from your interpretation of the interview, it sounds like he really wasn't trying to say anything. He just wanted to make like a sizzle reel, like an 80-minute sizzle reel. But I will point out that in the end credits, Elon Musk gets a special thanks.
Yes.
So
yes.
I
Forgot about that.
have a lot of questions about that. And that makes me concerned. And that is an even larger signifier to me about their reductive sexuality and I guess the gender politics. There's really not that many gender politics there. It's just man stronger than woman, and you exist to cater to my desires. And all of the TV commercials just solidify that. Even like the Divinity ad features more, let's say, male nudity than anything else that we see on TV. There are some like lurid female imagery in the ad, but it's really just mostly reserved for Jackson and his muscle brother,
Yeah.
which is a little incestuous, but it's just kind of reserved for Jackson being the brains and then his brother being the brawn, showing
Mhm.
like what this thing can do when he probably just lifted for like 40 years or something.
Taking a bunch of steroids.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Divinity,
Yeah.
but then all the other commercials is just like one thing that comes to mind is the Frosted Flakies commercial
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
it's totally demasculating and what was the word that I used? So many thoughts on this. Okay, so the comparison here, or I guess contrast really, is that Jackson models his flagship product Divinity with a self-injected importance before later a seemingly unrelated cereal ad derides its sole spokeswoman. She's the only one in the commercial. It's like a single camera of her at like a kitchen counter or something. She's like pouring cereal on her face. And then she mentions at the end, oh, there's a sample of Divinity in every box.
Oh yeah.
And then also the fact that she's relegated to doing this Frosted Flakies commercial and then dropping the Divinity sample thing is it's like, oh, here you go. You get to do this. Where Jackson has like a 17-minute infomercial.
Where he's the star, basically.
Yeah, he's got like the fucking scientist lab coat and everything.
Mhm.
And like he tries a stand-up routine, and then you see Jackson watching himself on TV. He laughs at his own jokes. He has sex with whoever that is that just walks into his bedroom
Yeah.
while his ad is playing, very Patrick Bateman style, where like, yeah, looking into the mirror, uh, flexing those biceps, just really into himself. I feel like I've drifted a little bit, but
Well, I
But
love those moments.
do you think the film thinks that Jackson is the hero?
no.
Yeah.
He's like a fallen hero, maybe. I don't know. I really like the advertisements because it's like, the creators of Divinity, like they're getting into the minds of the people. Like Serial, when I think of Serial, I think of it more as like a family kind of thing. I don't know. That's for children for them, like, adults eat it, obviously. But wow, starting off Divinity young, like it's this sort of like taking over of all of the like messaging, and like it is shallow, but maybe that is like naive camp.
Well, the TV advertisements, absolutely. I mean, even just Divinity's ad, like
Yeah.
it's like watching those like, aerobicized videos with the cheesy synth in the background and people just like exercising on camera and then someone yelling like pump it, that kind of thing. But with the serial thing, with 97% of the population unable to have kids, we're kind of just dropped into this. We don't know how long it's been. Like, are there kids?
I don't see any.
Is there like is cereal being rebranded for olds? Like,
Can olds eat
can
cereal?
olds have a cereal? Like, I think this is too much sugar. Because like, why would they put a Divinity sample in a box of cereal called Frosted Flakies? I mean, like, if you have a 7-year-old kid, like, do you want them to take it and stay 7, or is like some 37-year-old who doesn't leave his house like ordering cases of Frosted Flakies, just trying to get enough Divinity samples to like stay at the same age that they've been
Yeah.
while
That's
they're
me
just
for
watching
real.
TV. I mean, I would try,
Yeah. I
but
think I mean one thing, okay, I want to get into, because I think we haven't really discussed the other like big thing that to me I was like, oh, this feels like more of what is the politics of it, is that what Divinity is made from,
yes,
Yes.
because
this makes me so mad.
it turns out that, because we see this like when the brothers like first come into Jackson's house, they like go into this room and they have this like reaction, but we don't see what they see. And then they're like, when they're threatening Jackson, they're like, oh, like we know what it's actually made from. And then it's revealed that at the end that Divinity is made from fetal tissue to basically have an endless supply of fetal tissue that he can harvest to make Divinity. He mind controlled maybe and raped women and impregnated them with himself, his own like sperm, to then harvest that tissue to make Divinity, it feels like a far right talking point. It feels
does.
like
Shout out Elon Musk, friend of the pod.
Oh, get out, Elon.
But yeah, it does.
like this idea that like, oh, the thing that your youth serums are actually like the tissue of aborted babies, like, and like it's so insane that, and that's the thing that I was like, oh, is this like a genuine, like when I was watching it for the first time, I was like, oh my God, is this like a genuine fear and critique that Alcazar has? And that's why when it pendulum swung to this imagery of the penis plant, I was like, this feels so absurd that it made me think, it made me recontextualize every single thing that happened in the movie so far. Even if that feels based in real life fears or real life like oppression of women, I'm gonna discount all of it and not take anything that I saw seriously. But I also absolutely respect, and I've been in a place where I've watched stuff and felt this feels too real. This feels, even if this is supposed to be an extreme version of reality to laugh at, it hit too close to home. Like what we have our discussion of Death Becomes Her. I was not a fan of Death Becomes Her because I was like, the imagery of these women, especially like the fat phobia in Death Becomes Her, felt too mean and too like, felt like it could have an impact on real people. So I feel I'm like, I also get watching Divinity and feeling like it hits too close to home.
Yeah. And I mean, the ideas of going all the way back to, you know, what it is like to like live forever, like it is such you know, inherently, like I think it's a good choice to be like, oh yeah, it is made from fetal tissue. Like, of course it is, because it renders you sterile. And if that wasn't an active political talking point, it would hit really hard. It'd be like, yeah, wow, that's crazy. But there are people that like have a lot of opinions on, you know, stem cell research that kind of prevent a lot of growth in this country, and it's growing more and more crazy. And
I will say this, Divinity is definitely one of those like speculative sci-fi stories that fit in with a lot of other speculative sci-fi stories that people regard as at least like decent, good, or classic, or you know, must-sees, must-reads, whatever, that has been written by someone who lives in a very narrow bubble, who's like, what if life was like this? When life is already like this for people who aren't you, you just like ruminating on what that's like and like throwing a bunch of fucking filters on it. And it's
Margaret Atwood.
oh god, yeah, it's like it's insulting the more I think about it, honestly. I guess that's to me like where it fits in with other sci-fi stuff. Like there's some classics that I read when I was like in early years of college. I'm like, oh, this is really fucking good. And then I learned more about the world and was like, oh no, this is fascist propaganda. I can't endorse this anymore. How do I erase this from my head? Sci-fi is so riddled with that. Like it's so populated by white guys who think like, what if the world was like this, when they just don't realize that they can't step outside their own privileged position.
I also want to ask, since Fritz, you run Kung Fu Clubhouse at Grand Illusion, what are your thoughts on the like fight sequences and in this movie? How well, okay, I'll say my thoughts, but what are your thoughts on how like martial arts is used in this movie?
Okay. Well, connected to the movie that comes before it, it's wildly out of place. The claymation is really distracting, and it just feels like a 12-year-old choreographed the whole thing and directed it. Like all of a sudden, like symbols, vaguely racist, like semi non-Cyrillic alphabet characters just like pop in the screen. It's like, oh, this special move is happening. And it feels a little bit like a video game, feels a little bit like an anime. I think that's what they're going for. So good job to them for that. But it just felt to me that they made this movie so they could put this in there, and they wanted it to fit. And it doesn't help anything that came before it. At no point while I was watching this movie, the first or the second time, was I thinking like, these guys should really fight. Like that would be so cool. But I feel like Eddie Alcazar did, or whoever first came up with it, and something
Yeah.
tells me that he was the one. It's just like, okay, this has got to have like some kind of climactic fight, and there's
Yeah.
gonna be cliff top, and then there's gonna be like the alien ghosts or whatever.
Yeah.
And he's gonna have this chance for redemption, and it's gonna be like no dialogue, but he's gonna like, but then like he's on the cliff top, he kills the other brother in some Street Fighter move or whatever, and he weighs too much because of all the divinity that's in his system. He's too buff, so he can't like rise to the heavens. And then he falls off the cliff, and then he just like explodes into just a puddle of guts and stuff.
Yeah.
And then he gets his last line, which is like, I feel so alive.
Yeah.
What did that do?
One thing I learned is there was definitely always going to be a climactic fight. Apparently, originally the plan was for the brothers to face off a bunch. Originally, the plan was for a bunch of the brothers to face off against the Pierce brothers' security guards. It was supposed to be like a big fight with like a bunch of people, but apparently, like maybe because of COVID or just like budget, I don't know, they lost the space that they were going to do that in. So it was the backup plan to do this claymation style fight.
Interesting.
Okay.
But that like kind of like claymation mixed with like live action reaction is, I think, what his short films, Alcazar's shorts films, were made of, and that was kind of the thing that people were really excited about. But I definitely was like, what is going on here? And the fact that like the star, like one of the brothers, he like looked at this magazine and the beginning, and then his eyes flash, and then suddenly he knows all the moves. Like to me, I was like, that just feels like a Matrix ripoff. And in that like video essay I mentioned on the Blu-ray, it compares a lot of the body horror visuals to the work of David Cronenberg, who I love, but outside of body horror that kind of is sexual, like the final Jackson Pierce's final form is very phallic.
Love it.
I kind of am like, what is the Cronenberg's body horror transformations often come with a lot of reflection about identity and what does this transformation like mean for the person. And I feel like in Divinity it's like, well, it means that he took a bunch of his own drug, so I guess hubris. But he also didn't mean to take a bunch of his own drug. He was hooked up to it by the brothers. So
I loved I'm like the only person here that I loved the ending. I haven't seen any of Eddie Alcazar's short films. I couldn't find them, but I thought that the claymation shit was wild, and it brought me out of the like anger I felt about the film. And I think like he said in the interview, like the movie's about what it would be if someone abused a longevity drug. And it's like one of the cool things that stands out to me is like it's almost you're battling with the things that you made for yourself, this longevity. And we have that with like the two the inventor and the brother, right? Like
yeah,
the brother's more chill and the other guy's so consumed by his work. And so like something that came up with thoughts of like gender and stuff. What is it to live forever? In terms of like, are you as your own body living forever with the drug of divinity, or are you living forever through lineage, through having children, having a family, living through name and memory, and through these old videos of, you know, Jackson's father? Like, what does legacy sort of look like? And like kind of just like reaping what you've sown. And this like crazy ass fight scene at the end was so cool to me. I don't know, I thought it was so fun.
I like that it's goopy. I like the explosion at the end.
And all the jizz. Oh my god.
I do appreciate that the fight strips everything away of like it's on the nose like messaging and imagery and stuff like that. And I wish that the rest of the movie was as simple as that,
Mhm.
then I could get behind a fight that ridiculously cuts between live action inserts and like claymation wide shots. Mixing it together, even like now knowing especially that this was not the first choice to include that scene as the final sequence, or I guess the penultimate sequence. There's still some work that should have been done, I think, to like help bridge that gap, or at least like strip the rest of the film or something like that. I don't know. Like when I watch that sequence by itself, it's fun. Yeah, but I can't ignore what came before it, especially with this whole like divinity as babies and women are just holes to put things in. And they show up when you call them, and you don't have to pay them until like you feel like it's right.
I feel like we're kind of have come to an end. I wanted to ask, are there any last things that you really like, okay, for anyone who is watched Divinity, do you have one thing that you want to sit like, or one last thing that you want to say about like this movie that like, if someone is either has watched it or hasn't watched it, is there like a message that you're kind of like, this is what I would hope someone would have in their mind when they're watching it or thinking about this movie?
I think it's Vibes the movie. And if you love vibes, like if you're like myself and love a vibey movie, that's it. Turn off your brain. It fucking rocks. And I think it would be really fun to take Divinity the drug with all my like gay friends. I bet it would be hot. And I think we're all the three of us are going to do that after this podcast is over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess if you haven't seen this and you're going to, don't think that this is going to be a smart movie. Don't go in just because you like Scott Bakula. I was burned by that. He's barely in the fucking thing. If this lets you down once you watch it, just watch some Twilight Zone episodes where aliens show up and then like they need to help the human race or whatever. I feel like that'll be a good bomb if you feel like I have when you see this or when you have watched this. And you were talking about doing double features and stuff. Like I haven't seen it, but it's in the news now. The Substance would be a good one to follow up with because it seems like it includes those voices that are so cut out from Divinity, that is so masculinely dominated in Eddie Alcazar's vision.
Well, thank you guys so much for being on this episode. I really appreciate getting to hear your thoughts and perspective on this film. Is there anything that you want to promote, plug, have in the show description? Obviously, Grand Illusion Cinema.
Yeah, thank you for having us. This is so much fun. And I don't know, thank you for the opportunity. Obviously, shout out Grand Illusion Cinema in Seattle, Washington. We've been a movie theater for 54 years. We've been volunteer run for 20 years. We show the most 35 millimeter in the Pacific Northwest, and we're going to be moving soon. We don't have a new home, so please donate to us. Give us some money because while business is good, moving is expensive, and we would love your support. And nobody's getting paid, so like all the money that you donate is going to go directly to our relocation fund, and we're hoping to stay in the University District of Seattle. So it's a cool place. Come check us out too. Come see a movie there. That you don't have to donate. That counts too.
Yeah, just come see some shit. We're showing movies until the end of January, so we'll get one more of those famous It's a Wonderful Life screenings in like late November, December, and a little bit of January, I think. But we have a VHS Uber Alles show once a month. Those are really fun weekends, late nights, and I think we have one more Kung Fu Clubhouse showing coming up in December. I'm gonna say it. It's Mortal Kombat.
Nice.
If you miss that, you're fucking dead to me. But only 68 people max. So and of course I have to shout out Scarecrow Video because they're still the fucking best, and they're also doing fairly well right now. They've earned enough to stay open for another couple of years at least, but their drive is still going. So if you have not given, shame on you. Give money. If you have, do it again. Empty your pockets. Oh, one other thing. We're working on a zine. It's coming out at some point, but it will come out. So whenever you hear this, chances are will probably not be out yet, but it will be made by Grand Illusion volunteers. I myself am, I guess, the editor-in-chief of it, and I've been learning some hand lettering stuff to make it look. Yes. So I guess I imagine it'll be at the theater, maybe at Scarecrow. Maybe we'll create like a little newspaper vendor machine. No, we won't. That's too much work. It'll be around.
Yeah.
I'm sure it'll get mentioned when it starts to exist.
Hell yeah.
All right, everybody, bring out your Divinity. I'm taking
Put
mine
your
right
3D
now.
glasses on.
Oh God, this movie in 3D. That would be overload.
Yeah.
I would get a skull fracture.
Oh, 4D with the explosion and the water.
4DX.
4DX.
Yeah.
Smell-o-vision too.
It would just be BO.
Yeah.
It would.
Just BO and like axe.
Yeah.
Which you think.
Well, thank you again. And I guess that's where we'll end it.
Yeah, thank you, Saffron. This was so fun.
This was a divine episode.
Yeah, thank you for letting us react to the movie. And I'm thinking, I do appreciate learning more about like naive camp and like seeing it through like a different lens. So like this has been a really cool dialogue.
Yeah. I have been your co-host, Saffron Hefta-Gaub. You can follow me online everywhere at Gaub Hefta.
And I've been your other co-host, Fabiola. You can find me on Instagram at Fabi0LAHH and on Twitter at Fabiola_Liaño.
Our theme song that you're bobbing your head to right now is by Harrison Lurie.
Give us a rating on Spotify and a review on Apple.
Thank you to our patrons, Nicole Veneto, Jose Liano, and Pericles Sparrow. Please check our episode description for additional links and citations.
Thank you so much.